Today we're going to start our lesson on multiplying fractions. As we work through the PowerPoint and the video, I want you to think about how you can multiply a fraction with a fraction. I want to encourage you to take notes so that you can use them during your lesson work time. We're going to begin our lesson as always with our lesson objective, and that is I am learning to multiply two fractions. For getting the idea today, we're going to talk about multiplying two fractions or a fraction and a whole number, and how they were skills that you were taught in 5th grade. Actually, multiplying fractions is a 5th grade skill. I want you to think about what you learned as a 5th grader and apply it to what we're going to be learning in this lesson as we begin to solve multiplication problems using fractions. So let's look at the first example. Example 1, I want you to multiply 5 times 1/6. Now, the strategy I want you to try to use here is to change the whole number into a fraction and then multiply. Now, you may or may not remember how to change a whole number into a fraction, but I want you to think about what makes sense here. We have a 5. It is a whole number 5. We don't want its value to change. So how can we make it into a fraction that it would not change the value? So I want you to pause the video, try it on your own first, see what you remember, and then we'll go over the explanation. So what we're going to need to do first is change the whole number to a fraction. So we're going to take this 5 and we're going to write it as 5 over 1. Now, I told you earlier that we don't want to change the value of that 5. So if I read this as a division problem, 5 divided by 1, we know that any number divided by 1 is that same number. So that 5 kept its identity. It stayed the same, so it didn't change the value. Now we're ready to multiply the numerator of the first fraction by the numerator of the second fraction. And then we're going to multiply the denominator of the first fraction by the denominator of the second fraction. So when I do that, I'm just going to multiply straight across. 5 times 1 is 5, and 1 times 6 is 6. So the answer to this particular problem is 5/6. Step 3, we're going to think about simplifying our answer. So there's things that you should look at when you're trying to simplify fractions. You need to think about whether or not the numbers are prime or composite. Even or odd can help you out some, but in this case, we need to think more about prime and composite numbers. So let's look at the number 5 in our numerator. Number 5 is, I want you to think about whether or not it's prime or composite. Remember, prime numbers are only divisible by 1 in themselves, and composite numbers have multiple factors that you can multiply to get it. So let's think about 5, and I'm hoping that you're saying that 5 is a prime number and it's only divisible by 1 in itself. If it has nothing in common with this denominator, then the fraction is in its simplest form. And as we both know, or as we all know, 5 cannot be multiplied by anything to get 6. So it is in its simplest form. Okay, let's take a look at example 2. It is the same kind of problem, so I want you to try it on your own. You're going to change the whole number into a fraction and multiply. So go ahead and pause your video now and try it on your own. All right, so the first step here was to change the whole number into a fraction. So the whole number was 2. We're going to place that over 1, so now we have 2 over 1. The next step is to multiply the numerator by the numerator and then the denominator by the denominator, and we ended up with getting an answer of 4/6. We know that 4 and 6 are both even numbers and they're both composite numbers, and any even number is divisible by 2. So this answer was not simplified. So what I did here was I divided both the numerator and the denominator by the same number so that I would keep getting an equivalent fraction, and I now have 2 over 3, or 2/3. 2/3, both 2 and 3 are prime numbers, so it's in its simplest form. So the final answer here would be 2/3. Sometimes when we multiply fractions with a whole number, or our numerator can be larger than the denominator. What kind of fraction do you think we have when this happens? So I'm hoping you're thinking about what kind of fraction did I learn about in 5th grade where the numerator was larger than the denominator. And then I want you to think about, can you leave the answer in that as a fraction in that form? Can we leave it as that type of fraction where the numerator is greater than the denominator? So let's try example 3. We have 2/4 times 9. Remember, you're going to change that whole number into a fraction, and then you're going to multiply. So go ahead and pause your video and try it on your own first. So in step 1, we were going to change our whole number to a fraction. So now I have 9/1. We're going to take those same steps and multiply numerator times numerator. So 2 times 9 equals 18. Denominator to denominator, 4 times 1 equals 4. This fraction, when we have a numerator that is larger than the denominator, it's called an improper fraction. And we can't leave it that way. We have to change it into something called a mixed number. Now, in 5th grade, you should have learned that a mixed number was a whole number and a fraction of a number. So let's go ahead and look at how we change that. Remember that this bar, when we see the fraction bar, we know it means division. So we're going to read it from top to bottom, 18 divided by 4. And we're going to come over here and do those calculations. 4 goes into 18 4 times, and 4 times 4 equals 16. 18 minus 16 equals 2. Now you're going to see that I drew an arrow here. And this arrow is starting at the quotient, which means that's the answer to our division problem. That quotient is going to become our whole number, so it would be written as 4 over here. The next number that we see is the 2. That's going to be written as our numerator because it's the amount that we have left over that doesn't make a whole. And then the 4 becomes the denominator. It stays the same. That doesn't change. But we do notice that the fraction part of this mixed number is something that could be simplified. There's a number that can go into both of them, and 2 is a prime number, and 2 also goes into every even number, so we're going to divide them by 2. But if we look at 2 over 4, I think most of you could tell me quickly without doing any division that that answer would be 4 1/2 because that would simplify to 1/2. Okay, let's try example 4. This time we have a fraction times a fraction. So your strategy is going to be to multiply the numerator to the numerator in the second fraction, and then multiply the denominator to the denominator of the second fraction. Pause the video, try it on your own, and then I will go into my explanation. Okay, so the first step that you're going to take here is multiplying the numerator times the numerator. So 1 times 2 equals 2. 2 times 6 equals 12. We know that 2 and 12 have a number in common, and that's going to be 2. So we're going to divide the numerator by 2 and the denominator by 2, and the final answer would be 1/6. So I simplified the answer to 1/6. Example 5, again, we're going to be multiplying a fraction times a fraction. So I want you to go ahead and try this one on your own, and then we will move forward with the explanation. So here we're going to multiply numerator times numerator, and when we multiply 5 times 1, we get 5. And then we're going to multiply denominator times denominator, and here we're going to get 9. I'm so sorry, we're not going to get 9, we're going to get 18. I was adding them. See how easy it is to make those mistakes? So it's a good thing I caught myself. All right, so now we have 5 over 18. My question to you is, can this be simplified? So the first thing that we should look at is what kind of numbers are 5 and 18? 5 is a prime number. Does it have anything in common with 18? Can I multiply anything times 5 to get to 18? Hope you're answering no, because I can't. So this answer is simplified. We don't need to do anything any further. So our answer is 5/18. Okay, I want you to try example 6 on your own. The problem says a dime is 1/2 inch wide. If you have 5 dimes end to end, how long would they be from beginning to end? So I want you to write the whole number as a fraction and then multiply. So pause the video, try it on your own. All right, in this particular problem, we were going to rewrite the whole number as a fraction, so it's going to be 5 over 1. We're going to come down here, we're going to multiply numerator, numerator, denominator, denominator. In this case, I have 5 times 1 is 5. And then I have 2 times 1 is 2. So remember, this is called an improper fraction. We can't leave it that way, so we're going to use division to help us solve here. And we have 2 divided into 5. And we know that's going to go 2 times because 2 times 2 is 4. And we're going to have 1 left over. So we're going to write our remainder and our divisor as part of the fraction, and then our quotient is going to be our whole number. So in this case, we're going to have 2, and we're going to go to the 1, and then we're going to go to the 2, counterclockwise. So my mixed number is going to be 2 and 1/2. And that answer is simplified, and we're ready to move on to the next task. All right, we have another word problem, and this one is 2 fractions, so we don't have to change anything to any whole number into a fraction. You have 2/3 of a pumpkin pie left over from Thanksgiving. You want to give 1/2 of it to your sister. How much of the whole pie will this be? So you're going to write the 2 fractions down. You're not going to write a whole number. You're just going to multiply straight across. So let me take that off. We're just multiplying the fractions. I want you to pause the video and try it on your own. Okay, so for our explanation, we're just going to multiply the numerator by the numerator and the denominator by the denominator. So here we have 2 times 1 is 2. We have 3 times 2 is 6. We do know that those two numbers have something in common. They're both even, and they're both divisible by 2. So we're going to divide the top by 2. And we're going to divide the denominator by 2. And this should simplify our answer in its simplest form. And when we do that division, it should equal 1/3. 2 divided by 2 equals 1. And 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So our answer is equal to 1/3. All right, so let's revisit our learning objective. I'm learning to multiply 2 fractions. Remember that you should have taken notes. If you didn't, I would suggest that you go back and take them and use them on your lesson work to help you solve those problems. Thank you.